coffee down. Coffee's for closers only.
Oh, have I got your attention now?
All right, we are live again today. So we didn't advertise this particular show because we didn't know if we were going to be doing it. Dave and Gavin plane to Duluth, Mexico. I was supposed to be on that plane as well, but my daughter's birthday is today, and one of my commitments was never to miss one of my daughter's birthdays. So we're going to do a really cool show today. I have Brisa with me. Brisa is from my office. What's up, Brisa?
Hello.
So Brisa wears a lot of hats right now. She does some acquisitions. She does managing. She does DC. She's in a lot of roles right now and doing a lot. So we're going to talk today. We're going to share a little bit about a transaction we're doing, something that we've been working on since August of last year.
It's been July, or no, actually May of last year. We opened up.
May of last year. So we're almost a year on this property. And the reason why I want to talk about this one today is because there is some trials and tribulations through the process and some lessons learned through the process. So most everybody knows that watches or listens to my shows that I've done pre-foreclosures pretty much, the first 5 years that I did business. And that was my expertise, was pre-foreclosures and auctions and different things like that. So this one is a pre-foreclosure property, but the hiccups that we ran into and the things we ran into are unique to this particular property. So start with, I guess, the beginning. Let's go with the beginning. What we locked this thing up in May, what it looked like. Kind of tell the story, and I'll chime in.
Okay, so this lead actually called in from one of our postcards. I'm going to take that for my dog really quick. Give me 1 second.
All the things that happen when you're live and you're trying to tell stories.
Oh my gosh. Okay, I don't want her doing that while I'm doing this.
Right.
Okay, so we got a call in from one of our postcards, and the gentleman was explaining to me that the house is going into foreclosure. He needs to sell ASAP, and this is super urgent. So I'm freaking out, trying to figure out how to lock this deal up. So he told me that the mortgage is $60,000. There is a lien on the property at $25K. And I asked him, what are you hoping to walk away with? And he said, if I can make $5,000, I'd be happy. So we put it in contract at $90,000. We are super stoked. Amazing deal. ARV is out of this world. We're so happy. And we're helping this guy out of foreclosure. We end up opening escrow and going through the prelim that came in to find out that this is a probate deal, and it's going to be pretty complicated because probate naturally takes a couple months to a year, and this property was set to foreclose within like a month and a half. Right. So we were scrambling, trying to figure out what we were going to do. And then also an issue came up that he wasn't even the owner or had rights to the house at all.
Well, first we got the sale postponed, right? I think we were actually looking to foreclose within a couple of weeks. So we got the sale postponed.
Yeah.
We find out so we open probate, and in the process of opening probate, we find out that this guy has no claim to the property. And so there's two other parties that have claim to the property. So now we have to hunt those two other parties down and see if they're even willing to sell the property. So that process turns out to be kind of a headache because those individuals aren't really interested in anything to do with property.
Yes, because of a family feud. When the owner passed away, the family got into an argument and they haven't spoken to each other in 10 years. They hate each other.
They hate each other. So they're not interested in having anything to do with the property. They don't want to talk about money. They don't want to talk to us. They don't want to do anything. So we spend, how long does it take for us to get them on board?
Oh, goodness. Well, we were granted a postponement. So within that time frame, we were trying to get them on board. That first postponement was about 6 weeks, so a month and a half. So within that time frame, we were trying to get them on board. I requested a second postponement. So it was at like the 3-month mark of us being in that we had one party in agreement.
Okay.
And then shortly after, she was out of agreement. It was a back and forth for a couple months after that.
So in the process, we are trying to collect the documents we need to probate the property. We're continuing to work with the lender to postpone the property, postpone the sale of the property. And we finally, fast forward a few months, we finally get her on board and her brother, right? We finally get her brother on board, and we start to move forward with the process. So we get her to execute and the brother to execute a new contract,
Yes.
and we continue the foreclosure process. So here's the not the foreclosure process, but the probate process. So here's mistake number one. So the brother lives in El Salvador, and I'm not reviewing these documents. Obviously, the team is handling these documents, and I don't know that I would even thought that, in reality, but the brother's in El Salvador and the sister's here in the United States. So what we have is a situation where we don't even realize that, once they gets approved, we got to have the brother in El Salvador sign. So we're up against this clock of trying to keep this property out of foreclosure, pushing it through probate, asking for extensions. What we should have done when we originally did the probate on the property was just have the sister be the executor on behalf of her and her brother. That was mistake number one. Okay, we don't know this yet. So we're moving through the process. The sister is hot and cold. We're still having to keep her in the mix. It was really down to the wire before she was really committed to doing this, right?
Yes, and she was even entertaining like other phone calls. Like she wasn't 100% committed to us, and then you had to mend a relationship and get her back on board, and that was like the final straw. She was back on board after that.
Right. So somebody in our market who I interacted with was talking to them at the same time, and because of a relationship we had, we were able to have a conversation, and they actually help us keep this deal in our pipeline since we put so much work into it, which is gracious of them because they didn't have to. They could have easily stole the deal from us. So that's when people do the right thing, make the right decision amongst competitors, right? So we finally we get to the last postponement, and you ask for another postponement. Instead of giving us 30 days, it will only give us 10 days.
Mm-hmm.
And we have December 19th, we have the approval for the probate. So we're waiting for that date, December 19th, to get the approval.
January
19th, sorry. January 19th, we get the approval.
Well, January 19th actually wasn't an approval date. It was the court date.
It was court date, that's right.
Probate court on the 19th, and we did not get an approval until the 25th in writing.
Right. So we got approval on the 25th in writing, but now we have a pending foreclosure date of the 2nd of February, which is today. And they're telling us that there's no way that they're going to extend this past the 2nd of February. We can't figure out why. Beyond us, we can't figure out why. And we're telling them, like, there's just no way for us to finish this transaction. You're telling them, not me, but you're telling them there's no way for us to finish this transaction. We got the approval on the 19th. We got the documents on the 25th. All parties have to sign. All these things have to happen. In the meantime, the payoff comes back at $101,000 and not $60,000.
Right.
The lien that we thought was about $25,000 comes back at $30,000. So I'm on the phone. I'm negotiating that lien. I get that lien, not a huge amount, but enough to make a difference. So I get that lien negotiated down, $3,000 ish. I got 10% off, which only because of the sake of time, I probably could have got more off, but we got $3,000 off of that. So now we're at a purchase price of $95,000, but we have payoffs that total $128,000. So we're trying to see if these numbers work. So we're doing all this stuff. We don't have enough time to get it to the finish line because we have a pending sale of today, and we can't figure out why. And then we run into another roadblock, which is the brother being in El Salvador. And what happened? What's the issue with that?
The issue is that the final documents in order to close escrow legally have to be notarized. And in El Salvador, the only way to do that is to make an appointment with the American Embassy. And appointments are booked out a month and a half because of COVID and them being short-staffed. Right.
So now we're looking at February 22nd to have the brother sign. That's when his appointment is, February 22nd, almost a month, well, 20 days after today, the foreclosure date, but almost a month when we get this news, which is a few days ago. So that's where we say, okay, the first mistake was we should have just had the probate with the sister being the executor being able to sign on behalf of all parties because we'd be done and closed last week, right? She went in and signed all her documents last week. So we're in this conundrum now. What do? We have this property that's going to sale. We have this property that's going to foreclose and today. And we're told we can't get another extension. We can't figure out why. And we can't get the brother, one of the parties, to sign until the 22nd of February. So we're sitting here, we're trying to decide, do we reinstate this loan? It's $18,000 to reinstate this loan. Okay, well, we have no control of the property, right? So if we reinstate this loan, put $18,000 out to reinstate this loan, and the brother decides he doesn't want to sign, gets hit by a car, drops dead of a heart attack, the particular asset catches on fire and burns to the ground. All these things could happen in the next 20 days. And we have zero security, zero claim to anything because we don't. So, it's really, really risky to put that money down on reinstatement and wait, right? So that's an option there. We're working with the end buyer on this, because of course we were wholesaling this transaction, working with the end buyer on this, and the end buyer is willing to put half of the reinstatement down. We're willing to put half of the reinstatement down, but still it's a lot of risk. And I'm not really wanting to do it. So we ultimately end up in a situation where, well, you tell the story. Go ahead. So what happens? We're down to the wire. We're like, this deal, we're not going to get this deal. We're not going to get it done.
We're down to the wire, and we're going back and forth on reinstate. Should we no, we shouldn't reinstate. Oh, let's do it. No, let's not do it. And trying to figure out like what other strings can we pull that we haven't tried yet, because we've literally tried everything we think. So I go to our attorney, ask, what can we do? Pretty much the sellers have to file bankruptcy, or we have to file, what do we have to file?
TRO, temporary restraining.
Oh, TRO, yes.
Yeah. That was after me I sent you a message and I said, tell the trustee that we're going to take every legal alternative we have if they don't give us.
Yeah. So a little bit of power was used in our conversation with the trustee to try to figure out like, what can we do? I sent a large email pretty much saying everything that we're doing, everything we've done up to this point, explained why there's issues and that the holdup isn't by choice for us. And then Dawn ended up having to get on the phone and make some phone calls to try and persuade them in our favor, even though they don't have to. This isn't obligated by them at all, but we're just trying pretty much to pull all the strings.
And so here's the other issue we have is we don't own the property. The particular sellers now don't own the property. Technically, they got the right to sell it via probate. They got the right to the asset, but nobody can sign authorization to release information this entire time. So the entire time we're trying to figure out an alternative for the bank to be allowed to talk to us because they won't give us any information. We're getting all the information from the trustee. And so I'm on the phone yesterday going around in circles of people, talking them into sending me up the chain because their whole thing is if you don't have the right to talk to us or you don't have authorization on this loan, we can't even transfer your. Mm-hmm. And so I talk these people in the transfer me 3 or 4 times, and I get to somebody in the resolution department. And at the same time I'm talking to them and they're going through the file, what I think happened was they poked somebody on the trustee side. Because while I'm on the phone and this person's being very gracious and helping me without telling me anything, Barista gets an email from somebody she's never got an email from before saying, I need this, 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 and this in order to even consider a postponement. What we found out was our contract date expired today. Original contract date expired today, and they didn't have an extension showing that there was a contract, time frame longer than today. So that's why they had set the foreclosure date for today, and they weren't giving us any extensions. We didn't even think of that as our roadblock, and they weren't telling us that was our roadblock. They were just telling us that they couldn't extend any further. And so that came to light in part of that conversation, that was the issue, and that they needed the extension, they needed updated payoffs, they needed a few other documents from us, escrow information, MD receipt, and so on and so forth. And so we submitted all of that yesterday afternoon and around noon. And we were still trying to decide if we were going to wire the reinstatement. Did not to. And we crossed our fingers and went to bed last night. And we woke up this morning with what?
An approval for an extension.
Yes. All right. So a little longer than what we
I could
needed.
not believe it. I jumped out of bed this morning, so excited.
Right. So we had the approval for the extension, and now we are able to. We have the time we need. The sister's already signed all documents to be able to get into the embassy and sign his documents in El Salvador on the 22nd, and we'll be able to close this property and make a little bit of money. And the reason why I thought this was an important story to tell was because so many times through this process, it looked like we were defeated multiple times. First of all, we're in contract with somebody who doesn't even own the property. You have to find the people who have the right
I
to the
didn't have
property.
a valid contract for 3 months.
Didn't have a valid contract for 3 months. Finally, find the people who have the right to probate the property and they want nothing to do with it. And we have to overcome that obstacle and have a conversation with them. We're working with the lender who won't talk to us or give us any information. We couldn't get out our payoff for the longest time, and finally we found the loophole that got us that information. So the liens came back higher than we expected, and the numbers looked like they might have killed the deal for a minute, but we were able to ultimately make that work out. And honestly, we have a very gracious and awesome end buyer that has participated through the process with us and worked with us on this. So, and then of course we get down to the wire and we are up against a roadblock of the guy being in another country and not being able to sign. We have all these reasons to quit, all these reasons to quit, all these reasons to give up, all these reasons not to take this thing to the finish line. And ultimately, end of the day, we kept fighting. And one of it is, part of it is my nature, because there's a few times where I called you up and I said, we're dead. And then I call you back and say, okay, do this, this, and this.
Yeah.
And because I'm like a dog with a bone, I don't want to quit. And I'm always thinking about, what's the path of least resistance? What's an alternative? What's a way around this situation? And multiple times we were able to twist and turn and come up with options that allowed us to get things, further down the road to the finish line to ultimately we get to achieve our goals. So
You were going to spend money out of your own pocket to fly this guy out here if we could.
one of the options that I laid out was that I'll buy the guy a ticket to fly out here and sign the documents. Yet that was one of the things I proposed. And of course, he doesn't have, he doesn't have what he needs to enter the United States, unfortunately.
We were throwing everything out, though.
We were throwing everything on the table. It was Disneyland room. It was like, okay, well, what about this? What about this? What about this? What are our options here? And it was just we were constantly thinking. And this isn't a huge assignment fee. I'm not going to disclose what it is. It's not a huge assignment fee, but it's still, it's not nothing to sneeze at the end of the day. And but part of this whole process was just winning this battle, making sure that we won this battle and trying to find, every time we thought we were dead in the water, well, what is something that can keep us alive? And what is something that can keep this process going? And what is something that can get us to the finish line? And it was a matter of teamwork by all parties. You, myself, the buyer, escrow, and even the lender that ultimately got us to the finish line. So many times in business, in a transaction, we hit a roadblock and we think we're defeated and we just stop. And we don't move forward and we don't do what we need to do. And there's usually a way to win that we're not seeing. And you really got to commit yourself to, looking at options and alternatives and what ifs. And also, to be honest with you, asking the right questions, right, Reese? I mean, that was one of the things that we ran into a few times.
Yeah, I've learned a lot just within this transaction about the types of questions to ask, and not just the types, but how to structure the question, because you'll get a different response. You can ask the same question 5 different ways and each response will be different.
So, and what was one of those questions that I'm trying to remember now? I know I messaged you about it. You can probably remember it faster than I can, but what was one of those questions that, let's see here. It was something
so we had an issue because escrow was still trying to get the person who had nothing to do with the property. They needed him to sign an FI.
That's right.
And for the life of me, I couldn't figure out why. He has nothing to do with the property. He's not on title. He's not on the deed. Like, why do you need his signature? And they couldn't give me an answer. They were just like, well, he's on title. He must be on title somewhere. And I'm like, well, where? Like, I need you to show me where on title he's at, because I don't understand why you need his signature. And that was going to be another delay in the process, because he doesn't want to sign anything because he's not making money now.
No, he's not going to. He's an uncooperative witness at this point in time. So that was it. Statement of information. An SI in California, you may do them in other states, but an SI in California, statement of information, and they'll have sellers fill these things out because there might be, Joe Smith that has a lien or a judgment, and it's Joe A. Smith, and you might be Joe R. Smith, and so they're trying to clear that it's not your judgment or prove that it is, and so they'll have sellers fill out SIs. And so they were requiring us to have the original contract signer to do an SI, and you couldn't figure out why. And you kept asking, like, but he's got nothing to do with it. Well, he must be on the deed somewhere. That was. And so I actually messaged escrow and said, can you tell me what dates he was on the deed? Is how I asked the question. I asked a few different questions back and forth to escrow, but I phrased the question differently. What are the potential liens that we're looking at? Number one, and what are the dates that he was on the deed on the property? And can you ask title, whoever's doing the research, to send that information back? And we got a response back, oh, he was never on the deed. And the only reason they're asking for it is because he had signed the original contract. And therefore, we do not need him to sign it. And so the lesson for you, Brisa, obviously, and to anybody who's watching this is ask the question differently.
Yeah.
Approach it differently. Like, okay, I'm asking a question. I'm asking for something and I'm hitting this roadblock. And I'm getting stopped and I'm getting the same answer. How can I ask the question differently? And that's in sales. That's in like asking the seller for how much they want for their property. Ask the question differently. Ask it at a different time and ask it differently. And so I'm going to pull up here. It's not always good for live to do this, but I'm going to pull up the conversation with, let's see here. And have this. Okay, I asked for a call and we had the conversation and, about the particular SI. Let's see here. And then she's working with title and they may be asking for an SI simply because we were in contract. And she'll know shortly that that's the case. And we'll see if we can dismiss the need for the SI from the seller, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, you're amazing. She said, we don't need the SI, and then she'll prep all documents. So, but anyway, so it was a phone call where I asked that question, but I just framed it differently. Okay, so we have to have the SI. What are the things we're potentially up against so we can be prepared for it? The dates he was on contract on the property and the particular liens that we need to be aware of so that we can basically preemptively strike and try to get payoffs, settlements. And that question now being posed to her title department properly got the response we needed. We don't need an SI. And so when you're looking at these challenges, whether you're talking to a seller, because it's copy with closers and trying to sell, or you're looking at these challenges and you're trying to work out something in your business, obviously we're not going to disclose, we're working out a lot of things in our business, right, Brisa? Or you're looking at a transaction, working with title or working with different things. It's really perspective. It's looking at things differently. It's looking at, okay, what do I have to do to move the needle? How can I look at it differently? How can I ask the question differently? How can I approach it differently? And make things happen. And that's the important lesson that I take away from this transaction, that for all intents and purposes will be almost a year by the time it's done.
It's getting done though, and that's just mind blowing. I remember probably 2 weeks ago, Dawn was like, if we make money on this deal, this will be the craziest deal because it's been dead probably 50 times. I mean, this deal could have been dead 50 times. We didn't have a working phone number for the brother in El Salvador. We didn't have all kinds of things that kept popping up, and we would revisit every single day and be like, okay, we know we don't have this, but what do we have? What can we do? And it was just, we took it day by day, even though the deal was dead a bunch of times.
And part of it was not, one of the things that a lot of people look at is this giant obstacle in front of them. And I say this differently. Like when I give talks, I always say, don't focus on the pebbles in front of you, focus on the big rock, a big obstacle that can move everything forward. But I'm actually saying it backwards this time. When you have something like this, that is this ultimate hill you got to cross, you really got to fight the battles in front of you one by one. You got to look at the end goal and how to accomplish the end goal. but what's the first step to getting there, right? And what's the next step to getting there? And those are I guess it's opposite of what I normally say, in the sense of when you're defeated and you have to, you can't be inseparable and look at the obstacles. You push that one big thing over, but at the same time, when you're trying to move something forward, sometimes it is about step by step. And so, just an important thing to say. So Matt here asks, can you send a mobile notary to sign in another country? We asked that question, right, Brisa?
Yes. Some of the hiccups were obviously finding a notary that has a passport. And also, El Salvador has restrictions for traveling into the country right now because of COVID. Right. So we would have to find someone with a passport that's vaccinated and boosted to travel. And even then, they are requiring isolation when you get there. So it was a very steep obstacle for us to find someone to do that.
And it didn't solve the time problem anyway.
It didn't solve the issue. No.
Yeah, didn't solve the time problem. So, and then we can't have notaries there sign documents ultimately because, of course, you have to have the right documentation to sign legal documents to be notarized for the U.S. And so the U.S. Embassy. So it says U.S. Embassy does notaries. Yeah, that's the point we're making, is he's got to go to the U.S. Embassy to sign these documents. And because of COVID, the appointments to do that are limited. And the earliest appointment that he was able to get was the 22nd of February. And so in order for us, to obviously get this thing to the finish line, we had to get the postponement in the foreclosure process so that we could give him time to get to the embassy and sign. The embassy situation ultimately, we'd had to find somebody who's willing to fly to El Salvador. We had to pay to fly them down there. For them to do that, and get organized and get situated, would have been in play. The embassy has limited availability. That was the obstacles. You couldn't just walk into the embassy and get things signed like you could have pre-COVID. So, and that's really the obstacles that we were up against. So ultimately, at the end of the day, it worked out. We're going to end up getting the property to the finish line, knock on wood, right? In the next, basically 20 something days. And get this thing closed, and everybody's going to be happy, and we're going to fulfill our to the seller, and we made it work. So that's the good news. So I don't know if anybody has any questions about anything. I know Matt's asked the question in here. We have quite a few people watching right now. So a few people have said, let's see here, what we got. So is the deal worth going through all of that? I mean, it's not a small assignment fee. So yeah, at the end of the day, that's a fantastic. When you do the math on the time that we were in the deal, you would say no. But when you really take the time that we put into the deal, I would say yeah. I mean, the bulk of our time really dealing with this deal has been the last couple of days. Mm-hmm. We spent all day working on this deal yesterday, but typically we'd spend an hour here, 30 minutes there, a couple phone calls here or there. So at the end of the day, the deal was worth it. But really, it's about two things for me. It's one is this was an education moment for the team. Brisa, you obviously learned a lot from it, mm-hmm. Which is invaluable. There were mistakes made along the way that won't be made again. I even learned a couple things in this process, and I've done hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of foreclosure purchases and stopping foreclosures. Sometimes it's just about winning. I wanted to win. And how much is the assignment fee? Bruce and I talked about this before we started, and we said we wouldn't disclose the assignment fee. So it's better than 5 figures. Let's put it that way. So I think that's a fair assessment of it. So, but not huge, not small, worth the work at the end of the day. Oh, one of the other obstacles we got. This was fantastic. I want to throw this out there. I don't want to disclose this. Huh?
I was waiting for you to get into this.
You talk about the lien?
Mm-hmm.
Oh God. Okay, so. I negotiate this thing down. It's not a huge settlement. Like I said, it was like a $30,000 and change lien. And I have a conversation with a guy who's really cool to work with. and he doesn't budge much. We don't have enough time for me to really get into negotiations. He gives me 10%, so it's $27,000. So we do all our numbers based on $27,000. We're making sure that the seller is getting some money, a reasonable amount of money at close. And he asked me, how long do you want this to be good for? And I'm like, man, typically we do these things for about 30 days, but I don't think we need that. I'm not even thinking that we're going to have an issue with the consulate, the embassy. That was my bad. And I was like, just make it through May 4th or February 4th. I think we should be good. And this is like a week ago, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so lo and behold, one of the things that the lender asked for to approve the extension was an updated payoff on the lien, updated date on the lien. So I have Brisa call over, and she calls and talks to this gentleman. Again, he's great talking to him. And he's asking, why do you need it? And this is why, and this is what we ran into. And he's like, okay, I'll get it approved and put together. And we get an email over, and it's at the original amount, $30,000, which now kind of screws with our numbers in the deal. So I call the guy to have a conversation with him and get transferred to, I guess, his boss. And this guy was not going to budge. Like I said, hey, there's a mistake here. We were approved for $27,000 pay off. The only reason we're asking for an extension is because we didn't realize that we were going to have an issue with the U.S. Embassy and the dates, and we just need time to get it to the finish line to close. And he's like, you're not completing your original agreement, so oh well, I'm not budging. And I'm like, look, this screws up our numbers. It kind of torpedoes the deal. And he's like, well, if you want me to give you a payoff for $27,000, I will. If you send me $3,000 today, I'll give you a payoff for $27,000. I was like, that's not changing the numbers. Like, this guy was really, I don't want to say anything good or bad or ugly about this individual. Let's just say this individual did crap about our situation, did not give a crap about me, did not give a crap about the original deal, and was not going to budge. Like, nothing I said. I sat there probably, 20 minutes on the phone with the guy. Kept him on the phone. He wanted to get off multiple times. Yeah. And going back and forth, like, hey, you're a businessman, I'm a businessman. Maybe we could do some business together. Maybe in some way. I'm trying to sweet talk him. I'm trying to schmooze him. I'm just like, and he's just not budging. He's just like, look, I'm not wasting my time with you. I got things to do, and I'm not changing it.
The auction.
Huh? Oh, and yeah, and I'll just go to the auction and bid on the property. I was like, you really want to do that? You really want to go bid on? Well, I bid on properties all the time. I was like, whatever. So lo and behold, I was really, really nice to him, and I almost lost my cool just before we hung up the phone. I kind of did. I told him he was a piece of work, but I didn't say what I wanted to say. Thank God. But so I hang up the phone, and I look at Bruce. I'm like, we're gonna do everything we can not to pay these people, whatever we can to avoid them getting I'm on a mission. And then luckily, 30 minutes later or so, the original guy called back. I guess this guy went in his office and chewed him out, and for whatever reason. But for all intents and purposes, that company made it right and gave us our original agreed upon amount, and gave us the time we needed to get to the finish line. So it all worked out. I guess that the moral of the story is don't be a dick. Like, just don't be a dick to people. This guy, like, if he was burning on the street, I probably wouldn't piss on him to put him out. I mean, literally, like, and I don't mean to be that blunt and vulgar about it, but it's I'm serious. It's like, and he wasn't even gracious, and like, I would love to help you out, but it was just, I'm not helping you, and I don't give a crap, and you can go pound sand, and it is what it is. If you don't like it, oh well, I'll just go bid on it. So that was his entire attitude. And there's a lot better ways to tell people to F off. You know what I'm saying? He could have done it with a smile on his face. I probably wouldn't have been as mad at him, but it's just part of the process. So it is what it is. But at the end of the day, we got what we wanted to get out of it, and everything worked out. So what were your lessons from this, Brisa?
Well, I always have the talk less, listen more lesson on every deal I do. Mm-hmm. Asking the right questions, which was huge. And had I asked better questions ahead of time, like if I would have asked maybe the reason why the sale was so set on the date, if maybe I asked that a few different times, we might have gotten a different answer, and then I could have provided an extension. I mean, we got the extension addendum signed within that day in 30 minutes. So had I asked better questions, we could have had the deal structured where we weren't running around so frantically trying to get this to the finish line. And then also the biggest lesson on this is if there's a 50-50 split, to make sure that the executor of the estate is somewhere that they can sign and not in a different country. That held us up a lot. And if I would have made a better decision on that, going through probate, we wouldn't even be in this situation.
Which, for all intents and purposes, not pre-COVID wouldn't have been as big of an issue as it is now. So that's the lesson. We're in a different world. We're in a COVID world now. Before he could walk in the embassy probably any day of the week and got it notarized, and we would be done. But COVID has changed that, and so it was something we didn't see. But yeah, have all parties be available and to sign. And if somebody is in a situation where they're going to be more complicated, definitely, have one person be in control. Asking the right questions. We'll hit on that again. Asking the right questions. Like the question you could ask was why. When they said there's no more extensions to be given, why? Is there something we can do to change that? Those are two questions that we could have asked in the process to get an answer sooner that would have gotten us the result that we wanted. Probably not at the midnight hour a lot sooner. So something else you said in there. I don't know what it was, but anyway, those are great takeaways. Those are great lessons. Very important lessons in the process. And again, I think about too soon on these things. So, any other takeaways?
I feel like those are the major ones that I'm still like wrapping my head around for the next deal that we do. Foreclosures are becoming a bigger deal now, so just trying to make sure I don't make those same mistakes again. And then we kind of talked about like not giving up if there's a roadblock. So as you know, the lender was very difficult, would not give me any information. And the only reason I got information was because I went online, figured out who was in charge of the auction, and I reached out to them. And they're the only reason why I got information in the first place. So I could have given up right there, but I didn't. And we found a workaround. And yeah, I mean, just not giving up on the deal. And we had an obligation to the seller after finally getting them on board to finish the deal. So it was a lot of moments where I wanted to give up, you wanted to give up, and we kind of just as a team figured out what to do. So yeah, I mean, I learned a lot figuring out, not to stop when there's a roadblock and figuring out how to get around it.
Yeah. So, and the other thing too, like when these foreclosures are going to be something that is going to some point here in the next couple of years. You were talking to the lender, and the lender would not transfer you or give you any information because we didn't have authorization. We couldn't get an authorization, right? Mm-hmm. So yesterday I called and I ran into the same roadblock. I called up, I gave the information. They said, we can't talk to you. You're not an authorized party. And I said, that's fine. Just transfer me to somebody who is in the foreclosure department so that I can have a conversation with them. Well, sir, we can't transfer you because you're not an authorized party. And, and so I hit that roadblock. And I said to the guy, look, I said, I'm not asking you for any information. You don't have to give me any information. I actually have all the information. I just need you to listen. I said, this is our situation. This is where we're at. And I went through the whole thing. We probated the property. We have these obstacles. This is what we're up against. And I literally just need you to transfer me to somebody that I can talk to. Doesn't have to give me any information. They can help me out. And he kind of told me no. And I told him again. I said, look, I don't want any information from you. You seem like a great guy. I'm not asking you to do anything wrong. All I'm asking you to do is transfer me to somebody who I can have a conversation with that can give me my alternatives. And he transferred me. I talked to him and they transferred me. I got to the next person and I got the same thing. Can't do it. And I was like, man, you seem like a very, very nice person. And I said, and I'm just trying to do the right thing by these particular sellers. And, this is the situation I'm in. I ran down the entire situation. And I said, I'm really just looking, I'm hoping, I'm on a hope and a prayer right now that you will be able to transfer me to somebody that I can have a conversation with that can just hear what I have to say and give me alternatives. And she put me on hold and she transferred me to the resolution department. And And then I got to the resolution department. I said, look, here's the loan information. I'm not looking for you to give me any information at all. I know you talk to me. That's the last thing I want you to do is do anything wrong. I said, just hear me out. I gave the whole rundown. We had this thing and, we probated this thing. This is where we're at. We're up against this wall. This is the reason why we need the extension. I know you can't do anything, but can you look at the file and see what you can do? And she put me on hold. She came back. She put me on hold. She came back. She put me on hold. I'm still reviewing the file. She came back. And then she put me on hold again. And you walked in and you're like, I got this email. So I think that's what happened. But, and she poked the bear, the trustee. And then she was incredibly wonderful, this person. And then she put me on hold and transferred me to somebody who could start the process of us being able to talk to them, which ultimately at the end of the day we're not going to need to do, but and we wouldn't qualify to do anyway, but very gracious and helpful. And so the lesson there is not to take no for an answer. I didn't take no for an answer. I told them straight out, I don't want you to do anything you're not supposed to do. I acknowledged. You can't give me any information. So I did not take no for an answer, but in my process, I acknowledged their obstacle. I let them know that I was not going to ask them to do anything that they weren't supposed to do. I let them know that I've done dozens and dozens of foreclosures and I know they can transfer me. I use my power and my experience to say, I know you can transfer me. So I acknowledged that they could transfer me and that wouldn't be breaking any rules. And if they could just graciously do me that favor, I'd be forever in there. And each person did that. They ended up transferring me. So you guys can accomplish anything. You guys can get to wherever you need to get to in a conversation. No matter how many times you're being told no, if you ask the right questions, you frame the conversation right. And really, I guess this entire story, the moral of this whole thing is asking the right questions and framing your needs and properly in a way that is going to get somebody to acknowledge it and help you. That's what I got. So not a lot of questions here. So I think we're good. We're at the 45-minute mark. And I don't know if you have anything you want to add to that and say, and we'll give everybody a chance to ask a few more questions. If they don't, we'll jump off. So anything you want to add?
No, we got the extension today. I'm just so excited and obviously just going to wait for the 22nd, which happens to be my birthday. So I will remember that day to check in with him to make sure he did all those documents and just fingers crossed everything is perfect and smooth.
Right.
It's been
Fantastic.
a long road.
Yeah. And then we're working on one today that might be some property we're looking at picking up for a little over $2 million in the Bay Area. So we got a lot of good things going on. So no complaints. So all right. So what's up, you two? Michael, what's up, buddy? So okay, that's let's see, we got Michael saying what's up, we got Matt saying that's awesome. We had Jeremy ask for the assignment, then we're not going to disclose that just for the sake that it's not closed yet. And of course, Matt had asked us, we'd answer the question about whether or not the deal was worth the work. So I think we're good. I'm going to call it a day. If you get value from anything that we do here, Dave and I and some of our guests to these shows, make sure that you are and subscribing, make sure that you are, we actually are on iTunes, Coffee with Closers. Make sure you're listening to the show there. Make sure you're sharing this out with as many people as you can and watching this thing weekly. We got VIP Matt on here, was our guest last week. He doesn't miss a show, so that's fantastic. And with that said, Brisa, I appreciate you jumping on. This was last minute, by the way. I asked you this morning to come share this because I didn't have a guest for the show today. So we're planning on doing it, but I do appreciate you coming on. And yeah, so to everybody, have a wonderful and incredible